My name is Liz Jones and I work for Strategy Regeneration, a company based out of Paris, all over the world, a global network, and we specialise in innovation consulting. So Strategy Regeneration has a number of methodologies. One of them is based on blue ocean strategy. Comes out of INSEAD Business School originally. Chan Kim and Rennie Morgbourne wrote the book and did the original work, and we use a lot of the tools that are underpinning blue ocean strategy. The key concept behind blue ocean is that you're looking to find uncontested market space. Red oceans are where everybody's competing on an incremental basis, and therefore it's pretty bloody and not necessarily very lucrative or very profitable. The blue ocean is where everybody's trying to go, so they're trying to redefine the boundaries of competition. So that's the kind of key concept. A couple of the tools that we use which we find particularly helpful. One is the as-is strategy canvas. And what the as-is canvas really does is it gives you the opportunity to anchor yourselves in your current reality, which may sound a little obvious, but when you bring together a team from an organization, it's surprising how little understanding there is across the organization of what the company's value proposition actually is. So this is a great tool to give you a good sense of the current state. So part of the value of the as-is strategy canvas is that you're also asked to look at your competition. You're asked to benchmark yourself, and it is your view, but you're asked to consider yourself in the eyes of your competition. So how do you believe you stack up? How do you believe you compete in these various areas and dimensions that you look at in terms of the strategy canvas? So the second tool that we find particularly helpful is something which identifies pain points. And this is really looking at it from the customer's perspective. So many of us, I'm sure, experience services and use products, and we find it difficult in different ways. So we have pain associated with maybe it's getting to the airport, using a different washing powder, whatever the example is. So one of the tools we use is to try and identify what those pain points are from a customer perspective, and then aggregate them so that you can really identify where pain is in terms of the user's experience. So the third tool, just to talk briefly about, is what we call the desk is dangerous. So desk is dangerous is a really useful tool because it gets you out of your own office, it gets you out exploring with different customers. But the really neat thing about it is that you're also looking at non-customers and refusing customers. And you're going to other industries that you would never have thought about before. You're going to completely different service providers. You're looking as broadly as you possibly can to understand what opportunities might be out there in the world that you haven't ever considered before. And certainly our experience is that many companies are so focused on their own world and their own products and their own offerings, they rarely see opportunities in other industries. So just to give you a quick example of that, we worked with a medical devices company, and one of the things we explored with them was actually looking at the dairy farming industry, which you wouldn't imagine had any connection at all. But basically, the idea was there a utility for the device in cows? And so that was just a very radical, completely different departure to what I'm sure the organization would have considered normally. So that was an example of that. So in terms of implementing a lot of these wonderful innovative ideas, and particularly if it's business model innovation, which can seem big, I think there's a couple of things that we notice with the work that we do, and I also noticed when I personally implemented this within Pfizer, and that was that you really need to focus on how you're going to keep the energy and enthusiasm of the team going. And if you have a team that is charged with designing and developing the ideas, sometimes the implementation team has to be a different team. and you also have to protect them and insulate them from the organization. You may even need to create a completely different unit. You might need to put them in a little bubble and protect them, because the antibodies of the organization will immediately attack what it doesn't know, and that's just human behavior. So one of our key lessons is, how do you do that? How do you make sure that you keep the ideas blue, as in blue ocean, and they don't get diluted? And how do you protect the individuals to make sure they can realize the benefits that you've decided would come from this innovation? A second lesson around implementation is that it takes a huge amount of communication to the organization that you're working in so they can understand. So communication should never be underestimated. If you think you've communicated too much, you probably still haven't. So even though it might sound like it's the same messages to you, it bears repetition continually. So the third thing is that the bar that you set for success in a large organization is almost always driven by revenue, benefit delivery in a short time. So ROI is always one of the key factors. Often in new innovative business ideas, that is not possible in the same time frame or even the same context. So you have to, again, almost ring fence money and resource to allow the idea to grow, because otherwise you are already going to kill it before it's got off the ground. One of the best examples, I think, of this was we again in the pharmaceutical industry, was a completely radical approach to service delivery. And so one of the key insights that drove this was the fact that the customer, i.e. the patient, has a lot of free time when they're sat in airports. And that led to a whole business model of how can we take diagnostics, testing and clinical results to patients who are actually sitting around in airports. And it involved a mobile phone company and how we could actually connect the patient to those different evaluations in a completely different way. So that was a really interesting, and it's now in place. So this is my second time at ISPIM, and the reason I came back was because I found the huge value in the diversity of the audience. For me as a practitioner in the innovation space, now in consulting, previously in corporate, I find the blend of people very interesting. Because I also work in an organization that has academic roots, to me it's a perfect match. It's an absolute, match made in heaven, all the people that come to ISPIM, because it works very much in the space that I work in. I also really appreciate and value people's generosity of spirit and communication, and everybody's very willing to talk. There's no hierarchy, there's no sense of some people are better than others, and I really value that, and I think that it inspires a great collaborative spirit as you see throughout the conference. And the other piece that I think is really helpful is that there's such rigor in how the presentations are reviewed, and it isn't just a question of you've got something you want to talk about. People really look at the academic part of it, and also the rigor of what's being talked about. So I appreciate that too.